Hi there. Welcome to Smooth Finish. This is a special edition that we're doing for the homeowners out there. And we just recently recorded this same topic, which is the startup and maintenance of a newly plastered pool. We just did that earlier in the week, but we thought let's do this special for the homeowners, trying to hit on the high points and share what's important to the NPC. And the NPC is the National Plaster Council. We are a trade organization within the pool industry. And what we're really sharing with you today is our startup procedures, which the industry has recognized and grasped. We are actually part of quite a few of the new apprenticeship programs, the learning part for startup. Our class is what they're utilizing. We have our own certification program. And to that point, one thing that we're doing this for is we're launching free to the industry and to homeowners our new startup card. And that can be found at nationalplastercouncil.com and npconline.org. You can also find on there startup technicians. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce you to our group, our podcast here, which is our platform other than those websites. And we have with us today Chris Marcano. How are we doing, Chris?
I'm doing well. Once again, it's great to be here, everybody. It's good to talk to homeowners, too, and hopefully let them know how they can best set themselves up for a beautiful pool finish, a smooth finish.
Nice. And we have Mr. Rob Romano. How are we doing, Rob?
Doing great. It's a great rainy day, but you know what? We're all living it up and getting pools done and putting finishes in and looking forward to an awesome summer. And our goal is to make that as awesome for you as we can.
Great. And then joining us today, too, is Mr. Kent Westfall. Kent is our Director of Technical Services at the National Plaster Council, and he's going to be sharing some of the knowledge with us today. So, again, what we're talking about here, we want to give you the quick tips and lead you in the right direction to have that card handy or find you a certified guy to get you a great start to your finish for the aesthetics, the functionality, and the life of your pool. Chris, what do we need to talk about?
Yeah, so if you're out there and you've just had a pool installed and the finish is about to be applied or it's just been applied, what we want to do is have a simple, concise conversation to set you up with some steps or practices that will best yield the best results when it comes to the long-term integrity and aesthetic of that finish. So there's no two better people than Rob and Kent here, with their long established association with the NPC and the wealth of knowledge that they bring to the table. This is a great opportunity to kind of walk you through what can be an intimidating process. You know, I just spent this money on this pool. I just had my pool refinished. They left. I'm filling it up now. What do I do? So let's start there. I'm going to ask the two professionals. If you're a homeowner, if you're just now, the truck is leaving, they're saying, there you go, your pool is finished, you need to put water in this. Where do we start? Because a lot of people get they stumble right out of the gates because they're not testing their fill water. So I'm going to throw that out to you. Let's start with the water. Let's make no assumptions. Tell us what we need to do.
Start with that. Testing the fill water lets you know what you're putting into the pool. If there's metals or if there's any type of an issue, low calcium fill, it's going to allow you to take action ahead of time and stave off any problems that you might have with the finish. And it puts you in a proactive situation instead of reactive situation. It's very important and it's very easy to do.
It's a key step out there to pre-test for anything. And one thing to remember too is that, and I've fallen victim to this being in the industry. You never assume that just because tap water is suitable for human consumption and use, that it's ideally in a state of ideal being for swimming pools. Sometimes the pH is out of whack. Sometimes there's metals in it. Sometimes there's this. Sometimes there's that. So you never can make any assumptions because the parameters for drinking water are not the same parameters when it comes to balanced pool water. So, Rob, I think you were about to say something.
your fill water is your starting point, and it's water balance is so important, especially on a new finish. There's a lot of chemical reactions going on in the pool wall, and you're going to have a fluctuation with the pH and other parameters in there. So knowing where your base is most important, and that way you can go out, get the proper amount of chemicals to start the pool up, and help maintain that going forward. So testing that fill, whether it's out of the tap if you're filling with a hose, or getting it out of a truck. A lot, here in Connecticut we truck in a lot of water, but getting that base point is most important first step in getting a balanced pool.
You definitely want to know what you're dealing with. So let's assume you've tested your water, and we'll talk a little bit more about chemical balance and as we progress this conversation, but know what water you're putting into your vessel. That's utterly important. Now, let's talk about the physical filling, the task of filling a pool, because it's not quite as easy, unfortunately, as just chucking in a hose and clanging that end of the hose around in the swimming pool as it fills. So, guys, if you could shed a little bit of useful tips and practices on that too.
The last thing you want to do is fill a hose fill the pool from the shallow end. What the plasters, most of them should do is tie like a sock or a rag to the end of the hose, and they'll start it slowly filling from the main drain or the lowest part of the swimming pool and allow it to fill up that way. If you end up dropping a hose on the shallow end and letting that water run down the pool surface, the pool floor, you will get a stain. You'll have a run mark that's running down there because now the finish is hydrating a little differently than everything around it. And don't stop the water. Again, I go back to Connecticut and a lot of other places that fill the pools with trucked in water. You still need to have a hose running to have a continuous rise. If you stop the water at any point, you can see these lines form in the pool, in the surface, and it's almost like you're out in the country or out in the desert, and you can see the lines in the rocks and the little striations and the timeline of how long it took to fill the pool. It's so important to keep the pool positively filling.
Another thing that comes up in questions that I field from different people is, can I use my fill device to fill the pool? Absolutely not. That's for maintenance only. As Rob just stated, it'll run down the wall, run down the floor, and you'll get a hydration stain that is somewhat permanent. So do not use the autofill or fill device.
So we essentially want to start the fill process and do not stop it until it gets up. And this is another thing, to the mid portion of the skimmer. Right. We want to fill the pool all the way up to the top to where we can then start to operate the basic pump and filter portion of the equipment. Because we do want to get this the pool system running during this crucial startup process as well.
That's a great point, because if you do not circulate the water, calcium will precipitate out and stick to the finish, and it's very difficult to remove. So before the pool gets filled, make sure that your equipment is in good operational condition, and if you have the opportunity, clean the filter prior to. That is also a big help.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so we've addressed the know what water you're putting in there, know the physical characteristics of that water, the chemistry and the balance of it. We talked about the proper way to fill. We want to do it from the deep end. We want to make sure we don't have a bare hose in there. We want to cover any hard surfaces of that hose with some sort of a cloth or rag, a sock. And we want to, once we start the process, we want to fill that pool as basically as to the top, to the mid section of the skimmer at a minimum, so we can get the equipment up and running. Now, let's talk about how important it is once that pool is up and say we've got the pump and filter now running and circulating that water. How important is brushing, and why is it so important?
The brushing is something that is of critical importance. If you look at a magnified picture of a surface of any new finish, particularly a smooth finish like regular standard plaster, when you magnify that, you'll see all these little crevices in the surface, and those are natural, but they do collect dust and dirt. So With the finish being fresh and new, the brushing is critical to keep anything from adhering to it. When calcium dust adheres to the surface of the plaster, it carbonates, and then it's very difficult to remove.
So a little bit of elbow grease during this process, and frequent elbow grease, I should say. So brushing it often is just going to basically smooth out on a nearly a microscopic level, but on a very finite level. It's going to smooth that surface out and set it up to kind of cure in the best physical characteristic that it can, right?
That's correct, yes.
Very good. So everybody out there that's just getting started up, it's time to, if you're not doing it, have one of your kids do it. Get out there and brush the pool with the right brush, I might add. Make sure you're using a proper brush
Yes.
for the job, because there are different pool brushes for different surfaces in the industry. So make sure it's a brush that's designated for your surface type.
Ken, what kind of brush do you recommend for that?
Nylon brush with your smooth trowel finishes. And even with your pebble finishes, it's you can use a combination brush, but if you're going to use a combination brush, you have to use it a little bit gingerly than you would with a normal nylon brush. And one thing that a lot of people ignore is in the radius areas of the steps and benches, they have corner brushes that are designed for removing dust in those areas, and they're not expensive, and it will finish off your startup very well. I've seen lots of pools where the radiuses are ignored. You can see the dust that was still there because they couldn't get it with a normal brush. So go down to the pool store and get yourself a corner brush as well.
Yeah, and it's just a good idea. Once your pool is up and running and your finish looks beautiful, it's a good idea anyway to hit those corners with that corner brush, just because you get kind of dead spots, stagnant water down in there. You don't have to do it every week necessarily, but it's a good idea to hit those spots every so often with that brush. So it's not like it's going to be a one and done type of investment anyway, and it's not a lot of money. But make sure you do get the right brush. We mentioned a combo brush. They're very common. It's essentially just a brush with, the majority is nylon bristles, and it has some sprinkled into it some stainless steel bristles to give it some more rigidity. But make sure you're using the best and the right brush for your finish.
And it's also how often you brush is important. You're out there for quite some time. You get out there in the morning, you get out there in the afternoon, get out there at night. 3 times a day, we recommend brushing the pool. How long should we brush the pool for, Ken?
I would say for the first 7 to 10 days. And then as the plaster dust starts to disappear, you can cut back on it, but you still need to maintain the brushing procedure for the first 28 days. Don't
let up.
Don't let up, no, because then you start getting some staining. And it's when we were talking about your filtration running, the only way the dust is going to get filtered out is when you brush it and suspend that dust in the water, and then it goes through the system. Otherwise, it sits on the bottom of the pool, and you have problems.
Yeah. So if bite the bullet, brush it once a day for the first 28 days, and you're going to really, really have that smooth finish that we all desire so much. I don't want to dig too deep into this one, other than the fact that it's one of the most important areas of concerns or steps, is talking about the chemistry maintenance of that water. And this goes back to that initial talking point where we said test the fill water to know exactly what that water looks like from a chemistry standpoint in your pool, right? Because it went from hose water to now being pool water. It's in your pool. And we could nerd out on this. Trust us, we could nerd out on this for 6 hours, this group. But
that's all.
I do want to kind of just brush over it, no pun intended, and then direct you as listeners to a resource where you can really, really find all the parameters and directions on how to, quote unquote, balance the water into an ideal state. So without further ado, let's briefly talk about kind of the chemistry of the water now that it's in the pool. We've filled it, we've properly filled it, we've tested the water, we've started the brush process. Let's talk about the chemistry.
First and foremost, you've got to get your alkalinity in line. We have the parameters listed on the startup card that Brent talked about. You can get that free. And then you want to address your pH and calcium hardness. Those are the three biggies. Of course, you're going to be dealing with chlorine and cyanuric acid further down the road, but the biggest ones in the very beginning, pH, alkalinity, and calcium hardness. They can all affect the aesthetics and longevity of your finish, so you need to pay close attention to balancing them. If you're struggling with it, give me a call. I can talk you through it, or get one of the MPC startup cards and work from there. It's a step-by-step progression. It's should be easy for most people to understand.
I think that's, just to repeat that, we have available a human being who has more knowledge than arguably anybody in the entire industry that is just offered to you homeowners for you to go ahead and call him, and he means that. So that's pretty impressive, because this is honestly, we get it. I mean, chemistry can be tricky, and it's a process that is so important, but it's very often where errors occur, and it comes from a lot of things. So with a little bit of commitment and a little bit of additional understanding, it's not a difficult process, as Kent just said. And there's a hierarchy too of what parameters you should address first during this curing time. And it is different than once your pool's up and running and you go to, say, a pool store, hypothetically, and they test your water. The parameters are rearranged, because that is making assumptions that the finish is already cured, and it's just a run-of-the-mill, pool that's running, and they want to keep it safe from disease and bacteria. So there are different parameters, and that's where it can get sideways quickly. So please go to the website. They'll be down in the comments, but also NPC, the National Plasters Council website, and a finite level of information is available on the startup card when it comes to water chemistry.
The startup card uses what we call a Langler saturation index too, and
yep.
We don't want to get into that too deeply, because that can go on for a long time. But if you have questions, you're welcome to call me on that, and I can help you through it. It's a way of determining the status of your water, whether it's balanced, whether it's scaling, or whether it's aggressive. And it helps you in making adjustments to make sure that your new finish is protected. So it's explained briefly on the card, but if you have questions, you're welcome to call.
Yeah. It's as a finite and thorough process as possibly can be made. So, okay. So we've talked about testing the fill water. We've talked about how to fill up the pool properly. We've talked about the importance of brushing every day for that first 28 days. It just sets you up for that smooth finish. We talked about the importance of the chemistry and maintaining and adjusting that chemistry, and how you should go to the National Plasters Council website, download the startup card specifically for that portion and that information to help guide you through this. It's not hard if you just follow it. It's like making cookies. If you have the recipe, it's pretty darn easy. Now, one thing that we do want to talk about, and I am guilty of this myself, filling my own pool 4 years ago when I built mine, is that nobody should get in that pool before it is completely filled. I just want to go on the record and say at the time, he would have been 7 years old. He jumped in. It was still a foot below the skimmers. Luckily, there was no issues there, but it's human nature. If that pool's full enough, I'm getting in it. You shouldn't do it, and I'll let these guys tell you why you shouldn't.
Rob, you want
to? Well, especially if you're barefoot and you step on the finish, you could leave a footprint. You want things to set up, harden up a bit to the point where even so much as a bare foot won't affect the hydration of the pool. And having the oils and the sweat on your feet could leave an imprint down there. So that's something we want to stay away from. Other than that, it usually takes about, our thing is you wait till the dust clears before you can jump into the swimming pool. And that could be anywhere from 3 to 7 days. When you're brushing the pool and getting all the calcium off the pool wall and suspending into the water. Once that's done, have a blast. Jump in and cool off and enjoy your pool.
Also, Another issue is everybody loves their dog.
Yes.
I have dogs. I love them to death, but you cannot let your dog get in the pool early.
No,
No.
same thing.
Absolutely
They
not.
got claws.
Yeah.
Yes, and it'll
Soft plaster.
part of the surface.
Tear it up.
So exactly. So keep people out until it's ready. Now, another thing I want to make mention of here is that now typically when you're filling up this pool anyway, the water temperature is going to be pretty cold for the fur until it's exposed to the sun and it starts to heat up on its own from the environment, driving the temperature up. Now, if you've got a heater that was installed or a heat pump even on that swimming pool, I want to advise you, do not begin to run that heater for the first 28 days, as tempting as it is. Water temperature is a big component of the overall factor of the overall water chemistry and the quality of water. So if you do have, extremely hot water that you would experience being created in a heater, it can throw off the water chemistry and create an environment where you can get additional scaling. So do not start your heater, as tempting as it is. And I know everybody's really, really excited with the new swimming pool. As tempting as it is, though, don't start up a heater as soon as the equipment starts up. Your pump and filter are fine to run, and they should run nonstop basically for the first 28 days. But the heater and also chlorine generators, right? Do not add salt. Do not fire up or turn on via the controller your chlorine generator until we've gotten past and through this 28-day curing process. And I'll kind of throw that out there. I covered the heating component of it. It's just basically you don't want to create a hot pocket, literally, of water, because you'll most likely get additional scaling. But let's talk about the chlorine generator and adding salt.
The chlorine generators, we recommend 28 days, but the longer you can wait, the better off you're going to be.
I agree.
It's something that when you start driving the TDS up in the pool water, the higher the TDS goes, the more corrosive it can become. So when the plaster's fresh, it needs all the help it can get to get to that longevity and the aesthetics point. Again, it's tempting to fire it up, but you've invested a lot of time and money into this pool, and you need to keep in mind that just some of these items we're talking about may seem simple and not that important, but they're very important. That's why we want to talk to you about it. So please do not turn on your chlorine generator until the 28-day is passed, and also be very, very careful about what type of salt you put in, because there's a lot of salt on the market right now that is being produced elsewhere, and there's a lot of metals in it, and there's a lot of impurities in it, and it's going to wreak havoc on your finish. So get a pool grade salt and make sure it's from a reputable manufacturer.
And I would just emphasize that it's not just not turning on the salt generator. Don't add the salt in it until you're ready to use it. So it's keep it out of the pool for that 30 to 60 days, and when you're ready to turn the generator on, then add the salt.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the popularity of chlorine generators and salt pools is growing daily still. It's one of the hot trends, especially with new construction. So it's just extremely important, and Kent mentioned the TDS. That's total dissolved solids. And it's a very simple concept. It's the material that's basically dissolved into solution. So if you have quote unquote kind of harder water, it's going to have a tendency to have a higher total dissolved solid count. So when you're adding hundreds, if not 1,000 pounds of salt, of sodium chloride to water, that TDS goes up significantly, and water can only hold onto so much stuff before it saturates out. So you have to be smart about it. You have to be smart about it. And one thing I will add is it's mentioned as a step in the startup card, but it's imperative that you use especially with certain water characteristics of the fill water, it's very important to use a quality sequestering agent when filling up a pool, which is just basically it's a chemical you throw in the water that's going to hold on to problematic contaminants like metals that can stain the finish during this process as well. So especially if it's a salt pool, I got to tell you, because as Ken mentioned, a little bit of something problematic in salt, it's still probably consumable by humans, but it can stain your pool, and you don't want to do that. So just wanted to get that 2 cents in there.
Great. I think if we're going to be wrapping things up, because I think our time is up, the last thing I would leave you guys with is no wheeled vacuums in the pool for the first month also.
Absolutely.
If you're gonna need to clean the pool, get yourself a vinyl vac head. They have brushes on them. And you can actually kill 2 birds with 1 stone by using that vinyl vac head and brushing the pool and cleaning up the debris on the pool. Things hard toys, little things to throw in, let the kids go diving after. Hold off on that. You'll have plenty of time to have all those games and fun going forward. And once that curing process or the hydration process is done in the first 28 days there.
That's right. So I know we've thrown a lot at you out there, homeowners, but the bottom line is that if you follow these steps that we addressed today, you're really going to set yourself up for success. And all this information is available for free by simply going to National Plasters Council online and going to the website and downloading their startup card or their startup process. And again, that gives you also access to our good friend here, Kent, who is a phone call away to help you through this process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Again, kind of covering the basics here. As you can tell, we've refrained ourselves from totally geeking out. If this wasn't enough for you and you really want to know more, when you listen to this podcast, you'll see that we have other episodes. The one we just recorded is kind of more for the industry. We get a little bit more in depth, and we could get even more in depth. But we appreciate you listening. We hope it's been helpful. Again, we've said it enough, but nationalplastercouncil.com and the banner, you can find where to download that card. You can also find a certified startup technician that has learned our process, gone through our certification, and can come out and help you. You can sit back and start enjoying the pool, watching them do the work. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Yep.
And guys, we'll see you on the other side. Thanks for a smooth finish.
Smooth
Thank you.
finish.
Bye, guys.
See ya.